Hello, thank you for joining me. In this section, we're going to begin to walk through the basic fundamental pipeline for creating an animation in Maya. I'm using the HIK rig. You can see that I have my human IK control panel out, my 4-up setup, and my outliner. We will also be using the animation editors such as Graph Editor in this series. You may find this familiar. This is the animation proxy model that we are using. It has the human IK skeleton created for that, and we have a basic ROM animation that we're keying on that to get our weight painting corrected. It's not entirely complete yet. However, we are at a state where we can use this model to go forward for basic demos. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the Maya Human IK toolset. We had talked about skeleton and generating a skeleton in a prior section. Now we're going to go ahead and use the control rig to place our keyframes on. So we're going to go ahead and save as a different iteration and go ahead and delete history on the channels and get started. We're going to go ahead and do a walk cycle today. That is one of the animation types that you will be responsible for creating for your cutscene. I'm going to go ahead and select all the rigging and come up here to Edit drop-down, Delete by Type Channels. Delete all by type channels, and you can see now that there are no animation keys in my my time slider here. The character controls for the HIK rig, you will see the source as control rig, and you'll see the control rig components and UI in your viewport. Let's go quickly through the very simple UI. The first two are your FK and your IK handles, so you can toggle those on and off, the visibility of those. They're still applied even though the visibility may be turned off. You can also toggle on the visibility for your skeleton. Now keep in mind that we only skin our model to the skeleton. We don't apply keys to our model, or to our skeleton. That's what the control rig is used for. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the control rig and turn off the visibility for the skeleton. Those are your default settings. The first little man icon there is for full body keying. I make sure that I turn that on for doing my my first key on all, and then I can switch to part key. I've got pinning for translation and rotation. You can see that that is applied to the feet, both translation and rotation, and then you have a nice feature where you can simply depress the unpin all icon, and you will be able to unpin those during animation for a temporary period of time. When you're done, you can just go ahead and toggle that back off. Now over here I have the stance pose. You can go ahead at any time if you have been manipulating your rig and you want to go back to your stance pose. Click on your rig, click on your stance pose, and it'll put back the T pose that you originally had. Down below is your time slider. If you click and drag on the gray handle, you will be able to to scrub your animation, scrub between keyframes. This is how you move forward to be able to plot additional keyframes. Down below that, you'll find 2 data entry points. The first to the far left is the first frame of animation. This is the first frame visible. You can change the visibility. This is helpful for zooming in on a portion of an animation if you need to do that, working on that very limited section of your animation. Over to the right hand side, you have the visibility for the animation, and then you have the complete duration of the furthest numerical value here. Alright, these are your VCR controls: play, rewind, and so on. These 2 animation icons are also important. You've got auto key, which is currently depressed red. You also have the access to the preferences here. So if I go ahead and click on that, I can see what my current preferences are. You are able to set your playback speed. If you are setting keys and you notice that your playback speed is very, very fast, you're likely on play every frame. If you play every frame, you're going to get that very fast playback. You can, however, go ahead and use the maximum playback speed option and still play every frame. That gets you a little bit better playback visibility in your viewport. Whereas if you change it here, you're going to see that you're going to be dropping frames and you won't be able to see every frame normally, especially if you're doing a really dramatic move. Alright, so those set, I'm ready to go and establish my first keyframe. My best practice, and you'll find that every animator has developed their own set of best practices, so what I'm telling you now is not the industry standard. It's just something that I've gotten used to doing, and keying all of my nodes on that very first frame. So what I've done is select all by marking over the interface there, and I simply hit S on my keyboard to set a keyframe. Try that again. S on my keyboard, and it produces a small red line to the left hand side of my handle. Please keep that in mind. If you set a keyframe, it's always to the left of the handle, never to the right. So if you are wanting to copy information from this keyframe, to right click and copy, you need to be on the keyframe itself, which is always the handle is to the right of the little red tick on your time slider there. Alright, now that I've established my first keyframe, I know that using auto key, any change that I make is going to be automatically keyed. Otherwise, you have to key that first frame always. So what I'm going to do for my walk cycle is go ahead and navigate to my side view, simply using my space bar to tap and hover over my new selection viewport and tap again. So I do this quite often. There are other ways to navigate in Maya, but that's my my way of doing that. Alright, so to work out timing, we need to establish the key frames, the key extreme poses of the animation. In walk cycle, I generally look for the complete fully extended leg and then the fully up leg. So as we work forward, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. Since this torso is fully up with a fully up leg already, I'm going to go ahead and set a keyframe for that on frame 5. When I'm working out a loop cycle, I'm always working away from my first and last frame, because what I'm doing is establishing a tangent that I'll want to loop back to. And as we get to that point, I'll show you on the graph editor what I'm talking about with the curve data, how the tangent comes in and goes out at a certain angle, and working internally of my duration here is going to give me my best result. All right, so frame 5. Now I'm going to come over to frame 10 and give myself a down pose on my root node. I'm always working from my root node out. Now, there's very few instances where I've ever had to do anything different, and it's usually with an HIK setup, but always working from the torso, from the root node out. So if I scrub my 2 keyframes here, I can see that I'm going to be getting a little bob action. I'm going to go ahead and repeat those. I want them in exactly the same position, so I've come over to the first frame, frame 5. I'm going to position my handle on the time slider, right-click, copy, and scrub 5 frames further, right-click, and paste. Okay, so now we're getting a little bob there. I'm going to repeat the down pose, right click, copy. I'm going to scrub another 5 frames out and paste. Alright, so I'm getting a little bob action here. I'm going to go one more for that pose, copy, frame 25, and paste. Alright. So this will also help me to establish timing. At this point, I'm going to test my frame rate, my timing, visual playback, and to do that, have it look generally like a loop, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put my first playback frame as frame 5, since that's the first keyframe of my animation. And if I come here to frame 25. I'm going to go ahead and play that as visible at this point too. And go ahead and make sure that you're looping and play. Alright, so generally the FPS, frames per second playback, is just AnimSpeak. It all depends on your hardware and your software and a lot of other considerations how fast this actually plays back. One of the reasons why we use the animation proxy model is for that reason, to have very little. You can see it slowing down, and I've done nothing different. So again, it's just getting that general feel for the timing and then building on that. I'm going to stop my simulation, go back to frame 1. Now I'm going to go ahead and begin to establish the key extreme poses for my limbs. So this is my up pose. I'm going to go ahead and grab my leg, and I'm going to go ahead and lift that leg.